Hello, good evening, and welcome to Twilight Banquet Lufenia. This is the Exdeath BT raid against the Astaroths, and there's a lot to get through at the start here, because we need to maneuver Agrias into the 10th turn, right when they set up their break counters. And we'll talk about why, but let's talk about how first. And namely, I need to get Ashe broken, right here, which if you've done this fight, you'll know is very dangerous, to say the least, because if you get broken by their magic slug, which they're about to use, it will trigger an HP attack that will probably be fatal. So you see, she gets broken here, and the bravery is in a fatal state. But fortunately, thanks to Vaan's blind, we managed to get around it, which is fantastic. Did mean that I had to do a hell of a lot of resets. You need to get things like Agrias being the first one to go, because she can't maintain the orb, and because of how the orb works, you can't possibly maintain it on the first turn. Vaan, incidentally, can on his first turn, because I've got a Setzer sphere to make sure that even his first White Whorl is putting 2 debuffs on. It's only for that particular attack, that first White Whorl in the whole fight, but it's important, because otherwise I would get blown up by the orb, trust me. Potentially the speed down is helping as well. I've got Shiva here to help with speed control as well, because we're going to be relying quite heavily on Exdeath call here, and you only get 4 of their turns of that, so you need to maximize your own turns as much as you can. Fortunately, Ashe and Vaan, they do maintain the orb on all of their own turns, pretty much. It's only Vaan's Earthen Eruptions that won't. And Agrias sometimes does. I've said all that, but I haven't said what the orb actually does. But before we get into that, I don't know if you just saw, I used Exdeath Call because they just got their break counter shields up. So I needed to use Exdeath Call to make sure that I could use Kurasame Call to break the one that's got its break counter up, so I could use Ashe LD. I'm going to break that all down because that might have been a bit much, but effectively the break counter, that one with the yellow aura right now, if I were to break it, it would absolutely blow me up. It would lose all its debuffs, and whoever attacked it would lose all their buffs. It's not a good time. It'll probably kill. It'll kill on this team that has absolutely no mitigation. And you can't stop it from happening. It's not like in Exdeath LC, where if it's paralyzed, it won't do it. It will do it. Check out that orb on A. This is what I meant by you have to maintain it every single turn. Otherwise, it would have blown up by now. Anyway, the reason we wanted Kurasame Call to break is because calls don't trigger the counter, which is lovely. Really, really glad about that. And both Vaan and Ashe require using their LD to maintain their buffs. You know, Ashe for her Queen's Order to keep Vaan and Agrias hitting nice and strong. And Vaan needs his Mist, otherwise he'll just run out of White Whorls and it'll be over before you know it. But unfortunately, those are both tied to AoE bravery skills, which is a right pain. And that's why, as you're about to see, hopefully... Yeah, of course I'm going to use it now. If you bring a call in to break, it'll stay broken for a single turn, at which point you can use your AoE bravery calls, or AoE bravery skills, like Earthen Eruption, as we're about to see. And that is the only thing that keeps this run together. It's not a good team for this fight. It took more hours than I care to admit to pull these guys through, but I got very stubborn about making sure I could definitely bring Agrias through. The only safety we have beyond Vaan's blind, which is actually really good, it'll make sure Radiant Light is unlikely to kill so long as the blind is up, is we've got Reno LD Call for his fantastic Pyramid debuff, which I really, really like. It's got the unique property of also taking off their buffs, because they do buff themselves. You see the one on the right, A, has got now quite a nasty defense debuff. Defense buff, I should say. Which, yeah, we'll definitely feel the difference as the fight goes on. Now, one thing you have to be very wary of with Agrias here is she can't really use any skills other than her Knight's Pride, which is very nice, you know, battering the party, healing them up if you need to. But she doesn't have many uses of it, and it does have high turn rates. You have to be careful about how you use it. Fortunately, Summon phase, you can go absolutely nuts. I'm not going to be able to use Divine Ruination at any other point, so I'm going to use both of them in this phase. because they don't trigger the counter, the break counter, except for on the very last turn. So if Ashe on her last turn of summon were to use an AoE skill, we'd be in a slight problem. But fortunately we're not going to. It also gives an opportunity for Vaan to use another Earthen Eruption. Keep his mist up. Just a nice little phase to reset skills. Reset those all-important LD buffs. Poor Agrias not getting to use it. But, it's nice to see 650,000 damage on that. I'm using Ashe's Queen's Order less as turn manipulation in this fight, and much more for just maintaining damage. Really, the only way we're going to get through this is by doing as much damage as quickly as possible, and Vaan is fantastic for that. I say that, he still takes 40 turns out of the 60 to get through it. But you can't argue with, what is that, 900,000 across both? Oh, that is beautiful. And all of a sudden, it looks like we're quite near the end of the fight without having really done all that much. Agrias has been able to shut them down pretty consistently with Faded Moly. I say pretty consistently, she's done it about 2 or 3 times, but they haven't really had enough turns for it to be a problem. And fortunately, we've been able to keep Exdeath's debuff up on them. And I realise we've gone all this time without talking about the bloody orb. Ugh. Right, so let's break this down. The orb can tick up in 2 ways. One is that is if you inflict 2 debuffs in a turn, and that can be across both enemies. So if you to use a skill like Faded Moly, for instance, that puts a debuff on both enemies, that counts as inflicting 2. Great. The problem is that it only makes it go up by 1, which is absolutely nothing, and outside of summon, you'll never see it tick up from it. You'll only see it hold still. The only other way to keep the orb going up is to do HP damage via a debuff. That doesn't include traps, and I think the reason is that traps technically count as the debuff inflicts a skill that does HP damage, which is so stupid, but whatever, that seems to be the way it works. And the the only character in the game currently that can do that is Exdeath, which means, as far as I know, the only strategy that works for this fight without using Exdeath in some form, call, party, friend, however you want to do it, is Terra Yang. Terra is able to inflict a debuff pretty much every turn. God, I was really thinking about this quite hard because I realised B is about to do a very dangerous attack. I have absolutely no... I haven't got blind on it, so if it hits, that will be curtains. So my only option is to use that call I was saving for my next Nescience's Verdict, my next LD, and then I think press Maelstrom's Bolt. I think that's the only option, yeah. Get that paralyze off, make sure I don't just get murdered. It would be a shame to lose at this point, but this is the point that I start to lose a bit of control on the fight. Up until now, I know it all pretty well scripted, but yeah, here is where things get a little bit funky. Fortunately, Vaan can come in, not this turn, but next turn, with his Pyramid Call, which will be great. It'll let him refresh his Mist for one last turn. It'll also remove that very annoying defense buff that A's got, and make sure that whatever they do next, it won't kill. Really, really good call. Actually love it quite a lot. That Dispel is very clutch sometimes. Agrias starting to run out of meaningful things she can do. You have to be so careful with that Knight's Pride. Yes, you're doing reasonable damage. 200,000 is not bad. But if you take too many turns with her, you might get into situations with the orb, because it's going to start to become a problem again. That was their... I think this is their last turn of Exdeath's. Is it the Curse debuff? I think it's Curse. It's from Almagest, whichever one that is. Yeah, it's Diffusing Vortex from LD. So now I'm just thinking about my moves very quickly. Hallowed Bolt I can actually use at this point if I want to, because it got its defense buff up again from using the AoE attack it did, Radiant whatever. And we're doing little enough bravery damage at this point that I can actually use it without breaking. I didn't push that strategy too far, because the worst thing in the world is to think you'll get away with it and then not get away with it. So, just trying to finally kill off B. Because if I kill off B, then I can kill off A with a White Whorl from Vaan, and it'll all be lovely. So, I think a White Whorl should seal the deal. This is probably the most I've had to force the team into working, but thank you very much for watching all the same. It was a lot of fun to do, if extremely painful. But do stick around for Zandy LC, which will be the next one on Tuesday, I think. Anyway, thanks very much, and have a great evening.